Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar. If you are here today, it means that you have decided to host an international student, or perhaps you're already hosting an international student, and perhaps you're in a bit of a panic about what to get them to eat. And don't worry, we're here to help with that. So we have talked to, we did a survey of 22 of our current students, and this is based in a large part on their answers. So let's go ahead and begin. Okay, first of all, it's important to remember that every kid is different. So ask him or her. These are meant to be guidelines, not absolute blindly followed rules across the board. Each kid is different. And it's also important to remember, as an overall rule, that the teenage years are very formative years for lifelong habits, especially regarding healthy lifestyle. So please do what you can to encourage your host team to eat healthy. Imagine if you yourself were suddenly living in another country at 13, 14, or 15 years old. What would you eat? What would you want to eat? Would you always make the best decisions for your own health? So your host students are in the same situation. Do what you can to encourage them to make healthy choices. Okay, first of all, the good news is that the Chinese also typically eat 3 meals and on the same basic schedule as most Americans. So they're used to breakfast, lunch, and dinner too. Little bit difference in what they eat, especially for breakfast. So breakfast in China is usually savory, not sweet, and it's often eaten on the go, but many of our students actually said that they sat down and had a hot breakfast with their families. And remember, a lot of these kids are coming from families where multiple generations are living together. So the grandmother might make breakfast every day, or perhaps they even have a housekeeper who prepares the breakfast for them. So in any case, breakfast is an important meal. Most of the students said that they typically eat breakfast at home in China. And even those who did not said that if they do not eat breakfast, they are tired and hungry and have difficulty paying attention in class. And since that is the primary reason that they are here and they're living with you, please do what you can to get them to eat breakfast. Okay, so you might need to explain to them that in the United States, breakfast is kind of an independent thing. Most families, perhaps it's different in your family, but in many cases, American families are very busy, and while the breakfast foods are available, each household member helps him or herself. That might be something you need to explain to them, as well as the kinds of foods that we have in our households. So we'll come back to that in a few slides, but just as a general guideline, breakfast is a very important meal for them, as it should be for your own children and family. So breakfast everywhere. Lunch is a simple thing. Usually in China, they usually have a short lunch period too, but they do eat usually simple noodles or rice with meat and vegetables. Dinner, the same thing, soup, a variety of meats and vegetables and rice. Something to keep in mind is they're not big sandwich and salad eaters. So if that's your idea of lunch, soup and a salad, sandwich, that might not be the Chinese student's idea of a healthy lunch. So doesn't mean that you have to completely stop doing it, just bear that in mind. Okay, some basics. As do many US teens, Chinese teens like hamburgers and french fries, but 25 out of 33 students, as we added some students to the survey, 25 out of 33 said that they prefer to eat them only once or a week or less. So one thing that they all said is that they like meat, but they don't need it every day. So not just hamburgers, but meat isn't something they need every day. They don't like to stray too far from the familiar. So while they will try new things, or you should try to get them to try new things at least once, do not be surprised if they don't like cranberry sauce and olives. A lot of the foods that we eat, they find very strange, just as we find chicken feet to be very strange. So you can encourage them to try things, but don't expect them to love the same foods. Another thing to remember is that Americans eat a lot more sugar and cheese than Asians or nearly any other culture. So don't expect them to love our sweets or cheesy things. They love intense flavors and often sour flavors. If you look at the kind of candy they eat, you'll see that they really like sour flavored gummy candies and things like that. So maybe a little bit healthier than candy, dried fruits, and they love salty things, just like most teenagers, right? They like nuts, they like chips. So oranges and mandarins are a healthier option that they all like. So you could place a big bowl of easy to peel clementines or oranges on the table for dessert or just for snacks to grab on the run, and encourage everyone in your family to eat as many as they like. So back to the numbers from the smaller survey, 16 out of the 22 students we initially surveyed liked to snack on fruit. So good idea to keep a big bowl of fruit always available in your house. Broccoli. Yes, believe it or not, it may not be something that American teenagers like, but Chinese teenagers like broccoli. But don't overcook it. No one likes mushy broccoli. It's really easy to make. You just chop off the florets, toss it in a bowl with a smashed clove of garlic or some garlic powder, a couple of tablespoons of water, cover it with plastic wrap, and stick it in the microwave for 5 or 6 minutes. It's also really surprisingly good roasted. And cabbage, they really like cabbage too. It might not be the best smelling thing to cook, but it's actually pretty delicious. So you can slice it up thinly, chop it finely, or even buy a prepackaged, washed and cut bag of coleslaw without the mayo, please, and saute or stir fry it with a little bit of garlic, a little bit of bacon or ham, and it's actually quite good. You might like it too. You can add some chicken and rice to it and make it a whole meal, but generally with broccoli and cabbage, you can't go wrong with the Chinese kids. Surprisingly, a lot of them also said that they like sweet potatoes. Baked or steamed in the microwave, they're really easy to prepare. They're a good thing to make, grab and go, add to a meal as a side dish, or to use as a snack, even a breakfast. The Korean girls that lived with me like to eat sweet potatoes for breakfast. Fruit juice is also a hit, but remember, it's actually not the healthiest thing because it has a lot of sugar in it. No, it's not added refined sugar. They are naturally occurring sugars, but it's sugar nonetheless and has the same effect on your body. So a little bit of fruit juice is good for the vitamins and minerals, but don't let them overdo it. Fresh fruit is always better. Noodles, yes. Think noodles and you really can't go wrong. In fact, noodle soup is a popular snack food too. It's not just for lunch or dinner. Some kids eat it for breakfast and a late night snack, after school snack. 12 out of 22 students surveyed said that they like to eat noodle soup as a snack. Now, how much the students love noodles depends on where they're from and their family background. Some parts of China, noodles are the number one starch. In other parts, it's rice. So a lot of the students from the north don't really care about rice. They're very pro-noodle, and it's the opposite for many students from the south. But talk to your student about it. So while we're talking about snacks, bear in mind, especially if you aren't used to having teenagers in your household, that growing teenagers get very hungry. Not only do they eat a lot during the main meals, but they also get hungry in between the main meals. So it's not just the kids that you have, it's teenagers. They eat a lot. So like all kids, they like junk food, especially chips and ice cream. But just as you would want your kid, you would not want your kids living off of junk food. Try to encourage your Chinese teens to eat healthy snacks at least some of the time. In fact, fresh fruit was the most popular snack food mentioned by the students that we surveyed. 16 out of 22 said that they would like to have more fresh fruit available in their host families. And some of the fruits that they said that they liked, especially oranges, apples, cherries, grapes, melon, bananas, and many other things. Dried fruit is another option they might not think of suggesting, but they generally like them. Whenever I've brought them to class, they always eat them up. Nuts, too, they really like nuts. And for a change, something really easy to make ahead or buy prepackaged and frozen, are scallion pancakes. And if you click on the link in the slideshow, I've included a recipe just for scallion pancakes. If you happen to live near a Trader Joe's or a Chinese supermarket, you'll find that you can buy them frozen pretty affordably. If I remember correctly, I think at Trader Joe's they're around $3, maybe $3.50 for a package of 4. So those can be a really good snack or a supplement to another meal. Oh, scallions. In case you aren't familiar with the word scallion, that's another word for a green onion. Okay, so let's go back to breakfast. And as I mentioned before, breakfast is an essential meal, especially since these kids are starting school at 7:30 in the morning and often don't eat lunch until 12:30. So they might have 4 or 5, very often 5 classes before they eat lunch. And by the time they get to that 5th class, they're fading. Their heads are going down on their desks, their stomachs are growling, they're having trouble thinking about anything but food. So please do your part to make sure that these kids get breakfast, and preferably breakfast with some protein so it lasts them more than an hour. So when we surveyed the students, we asked them what they thought about typical American breakfast foods, and generally they like toast, yogurt, and eggs. Basics. About 10 of the students surveyed said they like cold cereal with milk. And although I have read that rice porridge is a very typical breakfast, it's also kind of an old-fashioned breakfast food in China. And there they jazz it up with nuts, fermented tofu, pickled radishes, things like that. A few of our students have eaten it, but very few of them say that they eat it regularly. However, about 8 of the students that we asked said they really do like hot cereal for breakfast. So you might test run a couple packages of instant oatmeal and see if they like it. If you do that, I suggest the low sugar instant oatmeal. And they also make low sugar cream of wheat. So generally those are a little more palatable to people who aren't used to the incredible amounts of sugar that are common in processed American foods. So try the low sugar varieties if you're going to give them instant breakfast cereals. Actually, rice pudding is so easy to make, though, if you have leftover rice, especially if your kid has a rice cooker, which a lot of them will bring. You can just put the leftover rice in a pot with a little bit of milk, cinnamon, sugar, and there you go. You have a nice sweet rice pudding, although your students might show you how to make it savory and spicy. You could let them help. Okay. Interestingly, half of the students we surveyed suggested hard-boiled eggs as something that they would like to eat for breakfast. Hard-boiled eggs and toast. So why not cook up a dozen eggs Sunday night and you have an entire week of grab-and-go breakfast. that have protein, nutrition, and will keep your kid happy and fed. Actually, you could make a few more and your whole family can enjoy hard-boiled eggs. Not mentioned here, but the students also said they like fried eggs and scrambled eggs. And remember, frying up an egg takes about a minute. Very fast and easy. Maybe you don't have time in the morning to dirty a pan, but if you do, it's really only about a minute. Just crack the egg in the pan with a little bit of oil. A minute later, you have the fried egg. Nice and easy. So once in a while, if you want to do something special for a surprise, oops, there's a misspelling on the slide, for a surprise variation on the boiled eggs, hard-boiled eggs, you can make tea eggs, which are a traditional breakfast in China. To make them, all you do is make your typical hard-boiled eggs, even a little bit soft-boiled. Crack the shells, but don't remove the shells. Steep some hot black tea, add a little soy sauce, piece of star anise. Anise is that spice, it's shaped like a star, and it tastes like anise. Anyway, throw that all together, put the cracked but not shelled eggs in the hot tea and let it steep. And then when you're ready to eat them later, you just peel off the shell and you'll see that the tea has gotten infused into the white part of the egg. And it has that nice crackly pattern. So I've included a recipe link here to a lady who has a great blog called ChineseGrandma.com. Lots of nice, easy recipes for feeding your Chinese team. Okay, so back to breakfast in China, and another option for you in your household. They love dumplings. Dumplings for every meal, snack, every time of the day. You might not think of dumplings for breakfast, but they're actually a very popular breakfast item in China. And if you aren't an avid cook and your student is not an expert cook, they're not too difficult to make if you have a steamer. But the good option is to buy them frozen. Nearly every supermarket now has frozen dumplings. Trader Joe's has several varieties of frozen dumplings. All the Chinese, Vietnamese, different Asian markets have frozen dumplings. So if you go to any of these places, stock up, grab some packages. These are things that you can make in the microwave in 2 minutes. You can make them a number of ways. If you don't have the microwave is the easiest. But you just stick them in the microwave for 2 minutes. So this is something that your most students can do for an independent breakfast. They can prepare it themselves. They can use it as an after-school snack or late-night snack. It's just a very good option to have these on hand in your freezer always. And as mentioned previously, they love sweet potatoes. Well, not all of them. Many of them love sweet potatoes. So try microwaving them for an easy, nutritious, and easy to carry with you snack. All you have to do is stab a pork in the sweet potato skin 5 or 6 times, put it on a microwavable plate, microwave it for 5 to 8 minutes, depending on the size of the sweet potato. So microwaving it is the fastest and easiest option. However, they're also delicious roasted whole, or you can slice them up, cut them up like French fries. Roast them in your oven for about 20 minutes, 400 degrees. Some salt and pepper, maybe a little garlic or garlic salt on it. They're actually good with cayenne pepper on them too. And that's another nice snack or side dish that the students always like. Ramen. Okay, ramen is not a health food, but the kids love it. Here we are back at noodles. If you feel a little bit guilty about letting the kids eat ramen, especially if they eat it a lot, you can doctor it up and make it a lot healthier. So one thing you might do is substitute, that is, the seasoning envelope that comes with it with some real chicken stock, beef or pork broth. Add some green onions, some mushrooms, a handful of greens. I like to keep frozen spinach in my freezer, and just when I need to doctor up ramen, I just grab a handful of spinach, toss it in. Shiitake mushrooms are really good too. a little splash of soy sauce, drop of sesame oil. You can top it with a soft-boiled egg. Sometimes I throw pickled ginger in it. So basically, you can experiment. You can let your kids experiment. And you can even use the ramen noodles with chopped peanuts or peanut butter. So I've included a couple of links to, there's one 30 ramen hacks, and another one is a good peanut recipe with peanut butter, and I think peppers and tofu. Dairy. A lot of Asians, not just Chinese, have an inability to digest dairy. They can't digest especially milk and ice cream, cheese. Yogurt sometimes is a little bit easier to digest because it has the enzymes in it that are needed to digest the dairy, the lactose. So even students who have trouble with milk and ice cream and cheese might be able to eat yogurt. But if you know they have trouble with those other things, start them with small quantities of yogurt. So the majority of our students actually say they really like ice cream, yogurt, and milk, but their tummies may not. Many times they don't realize what's making their stomach so upset. So as the adults, you might need to pay attention to what happens to them when they do eat these things. If you notice that your host teen has tummy aches or spends a lot of time in the bathroom after they drink milk, eat ice cream, or a meal with a lot of dairy, this is a pretty good indication that he or she is lactose intolerant. We get a lot of kids, inevitably, in any class in school. You have a couple of kids who need to go to the bathroom 3 or 4 times a morning, sometimes within a single 45-minute class. And why? Because they have had dairy for breakfast. So even if they like it, they might not be able to digest it, and it might be making them sick. So if this is the case, try to provide alternatives. Soy milk can be a good alternative. They make almond milk. Instead of ice cream, you could have fruit sorbets or rice milk. If it's one of those cases where they can digest yogurt, you might try frozen yogurt instead. And soft tofu can surprisingly be made into delicious fruit smoothies. So if they can't handle dairy, try adding frozen fruit, a little bit of juice. A banana is important for sweetness, and pop it in your blender. And within a minute, you've got a delicious fruit smoothie that the kids will definitely like. Cheese, while not a favorite food item among our Chinese students, only 6 students out of 22 said that they like it. 11 said, oh, they like it a little bit, but 6 said not at, oh, excuse me. Yes, okay, 6 students out of 22 said they really like it. 11 like it a little bit, and 6 like it not at all. So that tells you right there that probably it's not a good thing to give them cheese, at least not every day or at every meal. So if the majority like it a little or not at all, don't force it on them. Meat. Almost all of the students we surveyed like steak, and it's not something they typically eat in China. Yes, they eat meat cut up in little pieces, but a big steak is kind of an unusual thing for them. So you might have to teach them the first time how to use a knife and fork. Yes, they've used a fork and a knife before, but maybe not on a big piece of meat. But they generally love it. So large and frequent portions can be hard to digest, especially if they're not accustomed to it. And they say they don't really want it every single day, but they do love it. So if you can, give it to them once a week or so. They will be very happy with it. But in general, day to day, keep meat of any kind in smaller portions, like in stir fries, soups, or kebabs. They also say that they love fried chicken, rotisserie chicken, or any savory chicken dish. And actually, surprisingly, 15 out of 22 said they prefer roast chicken to fried chicken. So a little bit healthier than I would have thought. Seafood is as popular as steak. So these are not American teens. They love seafood. 15 out of 22 like it, and they all, or most of them, said especially shrimp. Shrimp was probably the most frequently mentioned favorite kind of seafood. Lobster was so-so. A few of them loved it. Most of them said it was okay. So you might think you're doing something extra special, but ask the student first, because they might be one of those who doesn't think it's very special. They do love shrimp. Although it's not seafood, I don't know why it's at this point. They usually appreciate pork too, but they didn't rank it very highly in our survey. I think it's more of an everyday comfort food, not a favorite food. But you find it's in so many of the foods that they eat when they cook themselves. So with the students I have hosted, I found that they enjoyed good old-fashioned American pork chops and pork tenderloin. So if those are the kinds of dishes that your family typically enjoys, go ahead and make them. I think the Chinese student will probably like them, even if they've never heard of them or eaten pork that way before. Something you can do to make it perhaps a little more appetizing the first time is to add some Asian seasonings, maybe a little ginger and garlic to it. Maybe serve it with some egg noodles and roast carrots. So it's a traditional American meal, but it has a little bit of Chinese flavor, nodding to their backgrounds and enticing them to try it the first time. Okay, fun family dinners. Everybody likes pizza, right? Actually, a lot of the Chinese kids do like pizza. They love pizza. However, they're given pizza nearly every day at school. Some of the school lunch programs, sadly, offer pizza, and pizza every day as their choices. Maybe pizza and salad, usually pizza and chicken salad. So the kids might end up eating pizza 5 days a week. It's not as big a treat for them, therefore. So yes, they like pizza. If your family likes pizza, once in a while, go ahead. Just bear in mind that they're already probably eating a lot of pizza. So if your family, especially if your family likes to do it, it's a family project. I know a lot of families who do like an every Friday or Saturday night, everyone gets together and puts their own ingredients on pizzas. That's great. It can be a fun thing to involve your host students in cooking and give them an informal way to socialize with the family. If you don't normally do this, try it. Buy a pre-made crust. The Stonefire ones are nice and cheap. I think you get 2 crusts for $3. Either way, you can buy lots of pre-made crusts or make your own for not too much difficulty. And it doesn't have to have cheese. If your student can't process cheese, well, the rest of the family can make their own pizzas with cheese, and your student can put their own toppings on it. You can try vegetables, meat, pesto, tomato sauce, all those sorts of things, and sadly skip the cheese. But an alternative to pizza is hot pot. Hot pot is a very traditional Chinese family dinner that they use much the same way that we do pizza. Everybody sits around it in a circle, everybody dips in. Hot pot is just like it sounds. It's a big pot full of hot liquid, hot broth usually, and then they put lots of little plates around it with the raw ingredients, different kinds of meat, different kinds of vegetables, some different spices, and then each person makes their own. So you add, usually the hot pot is divided in 2 sections. So maybe there's a spicier broth on one side and a salty, savory broth on the other side. And then you add your own ingredients that you want. You're into the liquid and cook it that way. So you'll see that meat is usually sliced very thin, so it can cook really quickly. And it's just the kind of thing that it's very social. Everybody gets involved. Everybody has fun. It's a great family event. If you happen to have an old fondue kit, good excuse to drag it out and put it in the center of your table on a Saturday night. If you happen to live in the Worcester area, we have 2 very good hot pot places. Red Pepper is the universal favorite Chinese restaurant of all of our students. It's at one end of Park Avenue heading towards Auburn, if you live in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. Another one is Chuan Chabu, which is also on Park Avenue, but at the other end towards Elm Park. And both are reasonable, fairly affordable. If you live elsewhere, there's a good chance that any of your more authentic Chinese restaurants will have hot pot. You just have to ask. And here are some examples. Do you see all the little plates with the thinly sliced meat and the different vegetables? Makes me hungry to look at. What about salads? Salads are weird to most Chinese students. You can usually get them to eat a little bit, especially if you're having a rich meal. When I hosted kids, they would eat a small portion of crunchy salads, especially if I had a fun and very flavorful dressing already mixed. They find oil and vinegar to be kind of weird. So something like a dressing with sesame and ginger. I had a lot of success with a dressing made with pomegranate molasses. Orange, like orange juice and soy-based dressings, and a generous sprinkle of fresh, crunchy sprouts and chopped up nuts. Basically, if it has that crunchy texture and it looks interesting, you're more likely to try it. And I think that's true not only of Chinese teens, but any teens. And in my house, we made it a rule that they had to have at least a very small portion of salad. They had to eat at least 3 bites of it. And then if they liked it, sometimes they would take more. But the rule was you have to have at least 3 bites of salad. That way I could make sure they got a little bit of green in them every meal. Some Chinese comfort foods are super fast and easy to make. So while you're not certainly have no need to change your cooking and change your lifestyle for your student completely, it could be fun once in a while to make some of these things. Egg drop soup, really easy. I've included a link to the recipe here. Actually, let's see if we can link to that. Surprisingly easy to make. All recipe, very good source for these things, by the way. So this one, if you see the ingredients, chicken broth, ginger, chives. Okay, if you don't have chives, they grow like crazy in my garden, so I always have them. Green onions is an alternative. So you have chicken broth, ginger, chives or green onions, salt, cornstarch, eggs. There you go. So easy. You can do that and impress your kids. Okay, oops. I want to close that. Sushi is another option, a little bit higher priced, of course, but many Chinese teens love sushi. And you can usually find it at a fair price at your local supermarket deli section for special occasions or those occasions when you don't feel like cooking. So even if your own family doesn't like sushi, it can be a little fun thing to try or to bring home as a special treat on a Friday night or a birthday or something for your Chinese teen. And meatballs. Meatballs is something that everybody loves, right? Maybe? Or falafel balls if you're vegetarian. This Japanese version, which is actually from that website mentioned earlier, ChineseGrandma.com, was something that my husband and my Korean teens that I hosted really loved. So these are called teriyaki meatballs. And just a traditional twist, a twist on a traditional meatball. But any kind of meatballs you make, they're going to like them. And again, ask your host team, but hoisin sauce, I think I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm not sure. And different kinds of condiments are kind of their version of ketchup. So a little bit of hoisin can make a lot of things better. It's a classic sauce to use with those scallion pancakes, a lot of different dumplings, especially pork dishes. If you're not familiar with hoisin, but if you've ever had, I'm forgetting the word. Oh, those Chinese pork pancakes that you get with pork and you roll them up. And Peking duck. Hoisin is the sauce that comes with those things. Anyway, it's pretty good, a little bit tart, a little bit salty, and maybe the student you have doesn't like it, but ask them because it might be something if you show them that they will recognize and appreciate, and they will add it to other things that you cook because it's something familiar and something they like more than our ketchup. So it's surprisingly good on things mixed in things like salad dressings. It's a good sandwich topping, especially if you make a sandwich with pork or even turkey, roast turkey. So it could be a little option. Ask your students what condiments they like because sometimes just having a couple of jars of special condiments in the fridge can be enough to get them to eat the kinds of foods that you usually eat. They just add a little bit of their favorite things to it to make it a little more palatable to them. Expanding their horizons. That is one of the reasons that the students are here. It's not for you to change everything and be Chinese chefs. So you're not expected to cook separate meals or special meals for them. Yes, it's good to sometimes reach out to them, to acknowledge them, and to try to make sure that they're eating, but they should also be trying some of the things that you guys eat. So, that said, you could make it a general rule that they at least try everything once, a couple of bites of everything. It's pretty normal, the last point on the slide, that it takes 4 or 5 times of tasting something really new to begin to like it. So they might need to have 1 or 2 bites each time for several meals, and then they might actually start to enjoy eating something that's very different to them. One thing that a lot of the students mention is that they're really curious about Mexican food. It's one of those few international foods that are not easily found in China. They have Taco Bell, not Taco Bell. They have Pizza Hut, they have McDonald's, they have KFC, but they don't have Mexican food generally. So it's something that a lot of them express curiosity about. And it has a lot of times cheese and beans, which can be difficult to digest, especially for Chinese students who aren't used to eating a lot of these things. So maybe the first time you introduce them to Mexican food, choose dishes that are a little bit light on cheese and beans, something like fajitas or fish tacos. And go ahead and let them try those other things, but keep the portions a little bit small so they don't end up sick. A good old-fashioned cookout. If you have a backyard, you have a barbecue, or if you have a park you can go to and do a cookout, it's something that will make a lot of memories. You'll see them pull out their phone and take lots of pictures, and their family and friends far away will enjoy it vicariously. So even if they don't love every single dish that you make at your cookout, they'll love the experience. So if you have the chance to do this, please try it. Good old-fashioned barbecue. Another thing you can do is when you're making a recipe, if you talk to them about it, you talk about how your mom or your grandmother or your granddad used to make it. You tell them a little bit about the background. Oh, this is a traditional Italian dish, or this dish comes from my German ancestry. Or if you give them a little bit of an explanation, they'll be a little bit more curious and a little bit more willing to try new things. And it also is a way to tell them a little bit more about your background, make the connection with them, and to teach them about American culture. So when you can, use food as an opportunity to share culture and to get to know each other. And while you're expanding their horizons, how about expanding your horizons? After all, you're bringing a foreign student into your house. Some part of you must be interested in that. So some kind of weird ingredients that you might have never thought of that you might bring into your pantry, either for your own cooking or for your students' cooking. Those teeny tiny dried shrimp that you can usually buy in little packets. They almost look like maybe they're freeze dried. But they're good added to soup. They're used in a lot of sauces typically to give it kind of fishy flavor, and they're surprisingly good in paper thin omelets. You make really thin egg omelets with a little shrimp in them. They're pretty good that way. With scallions too, green onions. Fish balls are something that you can find frozen or dried in Asian supermarkets. I've never made them myself, but some of them are quite good, not all of them. Um, if you find some good ones, they're really good in soup. They're good kind of fried. They're good like picture in the middle, put it on the kebab, roast it in the oven. So something new, you might want to try it. Ask your kids. Take your kid to the supermarket, go to the Chinese grocery or the Asian grocery with them and let them pick out some things and cook for you once in a while. Food is culture. So, like I said, talk to them about the origins of dishes, tell them about the ingredients, tell them how a vegetable or fruit that they're unfamiliar with grows. A lot of these kids have grown up in a huge city and have no idea about where food comes from. So take the time to educate them. And as mentioned previously, you cannot and should not customize every meal to please your host team. This will burn you out, and they need to learn about U.S. custom and culture too. So making accommodations for some meals once or twice a week shows that you care and will help to keep your host team properly nourished, but you need to stay properly nourished yourself. So continue cooking the things that will help you, that will make you happy and your family happy. As this is a cultural exchange, how about going to an Asian grocery with your student, as I mentioned? While you're there, stock up on frozen dumplings and buns and Chinese pickled vegetables for those rainy days, those upset tummy days, and let them show you and tell you about the foods of their homeland. You can do a quick Google search to find Chinese supermarkets in your area. Where we are in central Massachusetts, there are a lot of different Vietnamese markets that have Chinese foods as well. Actually, a lot of our local supermarkets have these too. We have a lot of Asian college students in the area. So even our big name supermarkets typically have a lot of different Chinese foods. Once a month or so, even if not at your local supermarket, you could go to stock up on those comfort foods at the local Asian supermarket. If you're in Massachusetts, and I believe in some parts of New York also, they have, there's a big supermarket called H Mart, which is actually a Korean market, but it has loads of Chinese foods. Lots of different varieties of frozen dumplings, steamed buns, meat cut in special ways, and they actually have a lot of hot food stalls as well, so you can get food while you're there to eat. It's kind of a fun thing to do. There's a location in Burlington, Massachusetts, near Framingham. And although there's another one in Cambridge, the parking there is really difficult. So I recommend the one near Framingham. If you have a Wegmans or Market Basket near you, I'm told they also have a really good variety of Asian packaged foods, as well as some Asian fresh fruits and vegetables that you might not find in your local supermarket. So I hope this has been useful for you, and I hope you will have a good experience eating and educating your Chinese, not eating your Chinese student, eating with your Chinese students and educating your Chinese student about the American diet. Please, please, please teach them that we eat more than hot dogs and hamburgers. Thank you.